Hello, I'm Cindy Arenberg Seltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County. Welcome to another edition of Future First, Focus on Broward's Children. Who are the homeless? As a society, we often characterize those who have no stable home and no resources to find housing as being responsible for their own condition, people who have no one but themselves to blame for their circumstances. That may be true in some cases, but there is often much more at play, particularly when considering various age groups and demographics. Many of us may not be aware of the plight of homeless youth and families in Broward. According to the 2015 point-in-time count report, there are approximately 2,730 individuals and families classified as homeless in Broward County. Approximately 10% of these are children and youth under the age of 24 who are either on the streets or living in shelters at any given time. Here is a short video that will show us some of the faces of this most vulnerable homeless population.
Return to me the memory of how we used to be. I don't like how this feels. Repair the past and give it back to me. I only want the good, leave out any trouble, edit out the pain. There's no need for that. Wrap it up without unhappy endings. I'll make up my own. I'm good at that. Back to me without angry words or tears. Back to me. Give it back to me. I only want the good, leave out any trouble, edit out the pain. There's no need for that. Wrap it up without unhappy endings. I'll make up my own. I'm good at that. Back to me without angry words or tears. Back to me. Give it back to me. Give it back to me.
Those stories are so powerful and heartbreaking, but no surprise to my guests. To help us better understand the issues of homeless families and youth, we are joined today by Liz Letzing, Director of Healthcare Services for the Broward Partnership, Melissa Banner, Community Liaison for Broward County Public Schools HEART Program, Jim Gress, Executive Director of Covenant House Florida, and Melanie Geddes, President and CEO of LifeNet for Families and Chair of the South Florida Hunger Coalition. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Very difficult to see those stories. The HEART program at the schools, I think a lot of our viewers would probably be surprised to know that we have children in school that are homeless and that we need to even have a HEART program. Can you talk about how the schools know that the children are homeless and what you're trying to do for them?
The schools find out that the child is homeless when the parent goes into the school and is not able to produce an address. From that point, they fill out a student question, student residence residency questionnaire. And we take that and we find out their specific situation, whether they are couch surfing, living in a shelter, living in a car, hotel, motel, whatever that situation is. We work with the family to get the best solution for them, help them to succeed in school, whether they need backpacks, uniforms, whatever we can help them to get, then that's what we do in the HEART program.
Great. Now, Jim, you've been doing this work for a long time. Covenant House has been located here and helping teens for years. Can you talk a little bit about your work?
Sure. You know, Covenant House here in Fort Lauderdale is part of an international organization that has been serving homeless youth in 21 cities since the 70s. And here in Fort Lauderdale, we opened a crisis facility on Fort Lauderdale Beach in 1985. So for over 30 years, this population of the homeless has really been our focus.
And how did children find you, and what do you do for them there?
It used to be that our largest referral source was other youth. Today, that's still true, but with the onset of social media and how that pervades young people, I think that most of them find us through other contacts on social media. We also have staff that are out on the street at night with a van actually looking for where youth may be that need shelter. And our program is not just a shelter, a place to lay your head. That's kind of how we started 30 years ago, but over time we've evolved into really an on-site service provision center for homeless youth, whether that's to reconnect them back into school when that's possible, or to help them to finish high school through an equivalency program. If they are 19 or 20 years old, they're not likely to re-enroll back in the school system, but we believe strongly in the need for them to finish high school.
At Covenant House, it's just the young people, right? They're not there with their family. It would just be the youth?
Unless the youth is a parent, a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, who has a child or children, as we saw in the video there. Some of those young people are living at Covenant House. The very first youth that ever walked through our door was a young woman, 19 years old, pushing a baby stroller with her 6-month-old in the stroller over 30 years ago.
So sad. Now, at the Broward Partnership, formerly known as the Broward Partnership for the Homeless, but we've gone through a name change, as many of our nonprofits have. You're seeing more of the family, is that correct?
Correct. So we are a 230-bed emergency homeless shelter, and about 70 of those beds we reserve for family members. So families come into our shelter, they're referred by 211. I just want to put it out there that if a family is experiencing homelessness, they should call 211. And then 211 makes that referral to our shelter. And then we get the families into our shelter. We help to stabilize them medically, psychologically, psychiatrically. And then we really work on addressing and individualizing care for them while they're at our shelter. They can stay at our shelter for about 90 days. And then we help link the children through case management to schools, because many of them, when they come into shelter, don't have addresses, so the kids haven't been in schools. So we help the babies get into daycare, and we offer a tremendous amount of services. And then we really focus on the parents, because in the end, if we can help stabilize the parents, that's what's best for the kids. So we have a workforce development team, and then ultimately a pretty big housing program, because our mission is really to reduce the homeless problem of singles and families.
And I think it's really important. I mean, what you just said is so vital, and for our viewers to understand that this is not about keeping people homeless. This is not about just making it more comfortable for them to be homeless. It's really about empowering people and helping them get back on their feet and back into a situation where they can be self-sustained, if that's possible.
Correct.
There may be circumstances that are not, that are beyond their control. Sometimes mental illness can get in the way, but we saw a lot of people who really just hit a bad circumstance. And Melanie, LifeNet for Families is a lot about that, right? Providing that, helping them gain that stability.
Absolutely. At LifeNet, we primarily provide food for people who are hungry, and we don't ask questions. So any Broward County resident can come to LifeNet and receive a hot meal. And And we find that a lot of the homeless population frequents our organization, especially those who are not able to get into some of the other existing programs in the community, either because they're full or because they have to go through a process. If you're homeless, you can't just walk into a shelter. So what ends up happening is, during that time while people have nowhere else to turn, they're either directed to come to LifeNet by another case manager or agency, the police department, or it may even be just word of mouth on the street. And it's a place where men, women, children can come and have a hot meal, and they can also have a shower. We have clothing, we have a mail room. So we sort of try and connect people to basic services. Shayla, who was in that video, is one of the parents who was living in her van with her son, who's 10. And he didn't have a place to shower because they were on the waiting list for shelter. So for her, it was so important because he has to go to school and he has to fit in with all of the other children. And kids can be cruel. And so if people are not aware of what's going on, it may look bad. So we're able to offer them a place where they can get a shower, where he can get clothing and other services and supports.
And you, while this is mainly about homelessness, you can't really separate what you can, but the issue of hunger is very closely tied to the issue of homelessness. Although we have many people, our ALICE families, those asset limited, income constrained, employed people who also have difficulty making ends meet and feeding their families. You're chair of the South Florida Hunger Coalition. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about and what that strives to do?
Well, you know, there's a huge need in our community. There are a lot of families here who just don't have enough food. And these are working families. Oftentimes it's a teacher, it's a person who's home foreclosed, someone who lost their job. A death in the family can take someone from being able to take care of themselves to, you know, needing basic support or assistance. And sometimes choosing between keeping your lights on or eating food, people may choose to keep the lights on, and they may choose to purchase food that are not healthy. So the South Florida Hunger Coalition strives to make sure that we support those food programs, pantries, and food banks that provide those services in our community. And we try and make sure that we advocate for those types of programs and to make sure that there's enough food to go around and that people are sharing resources and that pantries in our area, those who are running them, are aware of how they can support each other and how we can make sure that we can limit duplication of services but ensure that those who need the food are able to access it.
That is one of the great collaborations of Broward County, which is known for its collaboration. Starting out 15 years ago as the Million Meals Committee, really trying to make sure that we all work together and that avoiding duplication for those who want to donate or get involved and are always concerned that, you know, people are stepping on each other. That's an area where we're really working together, as is homelessness. You have a really nice collaborative going on to address this issue of homelessness.
I think the food issue is so basic too, because those of us that maybe don't worry or struggle about where we're going to get our next meal sort of take for granted, but we also all know that food is kind of the universal starting point that we all begin with in relationships and conversations with family. And I know, you know, for us at Covenant House, when a young person walks through our door, the very first service we offer after welcome is, are you hungry? Because it is where everybody starts.
Yeah. It's hard to concentrate on anything else
Absolutely.
when your stomach is growling.
Right.
You know, going back to the working and a crisis setting you back, I think one of the more shocking, well, they were all heartbreaking, but the woman who held up, I work at a law firm, and yet she's homeless. So how does that happen?
It's actually pretty common that can happen. You know, many of our families are living paycheck to paycheck, and a medical issue, a legal issue can just sort of take them out of housing because the cost of housing in Broward County can be so expensive. So oftentimes, the majority of the families that come into shelter really just need a place to sort of relax, stabilize, not necessarily worry where their next meal is coming from. You know, have a roof over their head so that they can save a little bit of money. And our agency and our case managers, help the families to budget so that when they get out into the community, we're fortunate that we're funded by local and federal grants as well as very generous private funders. And oftentimes we can assist the family when they, first of all, find an apartment. And then once they get an apartment, we can assist them with first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, because oftentimes that can be a huge barrier for somebody to get into housing. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's very common for a family to come in and say, I don't have that money. So, our agency and Broward County really assist families with that, and we can assist with all sorts of things that can help families get back on their feet.
Yeah, for those who have lived in one place for a long time, you may forget what that's like. I mean, 3 months rent in a place, in an area where a month's rent is upwards of $1,500, you can't get much for less than that, even a small place. That's a lot of money to put together at one time.
Yes.
So if somebody wanted to help, if they wanted to get involved and help the homeless population, what would you say would be the best way for them to get involved? Any of you? All of you? Tell me.
I think, from our standpoint, we always think in terms of that old adage of time, talent, and treasure. Some people are able to make a financial contribution to support this work, and I think we all, would welcome that. We all have programs to run and bills to pay. But in people's heart, I'm sorry?
Do you take volunteers, Jim?
We do, yeah. In people's heart sometimes is that desire to give something back. And sometimes that's time, and sometimes that's their experience in life. At Covenant House, we have one of our former residents from many years ago just reached out a few days ago. She was with us back in the early 90s. She just passed the Florida bar 2 weeks ago. And she's coming to speak at our graduation ceremony because we have a number of young people who've graduated high school in a couple of weeks. And she was already talking about wanting to volunteer. She hopes one day to open an agency similar to Covenant House to help homeless youth, but she already wants to volunteer. So we encourage people with an interest and a passion for helping homeless youth, in our case, to come and help tutor, help provide meals, help do outreach. We have all kinds of opportunities for many hands.
And you actually run something really interesting that I haven't yet had the chance to do, but I really want to spend a night experiencing what it's like to be a homeless person.
Yes, it's a fundraiser ultimately, but it's the most incredible, realistic opportunity. We do a one-night sleep out in November where we ask people to come from the community and spend one night with a piece of cardboard and a sleeping bag in our parking lot, so you're safe. But really experience what that would be like, and we do a lot of conversation before we actually go and lay our heads on the pavement about imagine what it would be like to do this when you were 18 or 19 or 20 years old, and tomorrow where are you going to go, and where are you going to sleep, and how are you going to eat, and those are conversations and struggles that most of us, I think back to myself at 18 or 19, I don't know how I would have managed that. So we asked the community to come together as a way to understand at a much, for me, the most deep level you can, what this is like for young people to be homeless on the street.
And we also have started a mentoring program through our department where we solicit mentors. You have to be, of course, screened by the School Board of Broward County, but after that we pair you up with a mentee that's living in a shelter, and then you just form a relationship with that child, and hopefully it goes through their education.
And you also now, the Broward Education Foundation, I believe, has set up a fund specifically to help homeless youth.
Right. We set up a fund in September, Forever Home 101, and at that time we had 101 families living in in cars, and so that fund was set up to specifically help those families as well as the unaccompanied youth that were living place to place, couch surfing, and things like that. So that fund is still available. You can still give online. It's Forever Home 101, and it's under Broward Education Foundation. To date, we've raised about $36,000.
That's great, but clearly not enough.
Definitely not enough.
Well, when you think of the stress, we want our children to be able to focus on their education, on getting through school and getting a diploma and going on to college or a technical school so that they can work. And yet, if you don't know where your next meal is coming from or where you're going to sleep, how is your attention going to be focused on this stupid math problem that you don't understand how it relates to your life? Or literature. I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs really makes it clear that that's going to be the last thing you're going to care about at that moment. You want to be fed, you want to know where you're going. Yeah.
We're always looking for financial and all kinds of donations. You can go to our website, bphi.org. But absolutely, when children really don't know where they're getting their next meal, all these other things really don't matter, and they can't focus. So, at our agency, because they have 90 days to stay at our shelter, we really try to help give the children structure and a routine, which is so important. And we also try to help the parents get into structure and routine and setting up resumes and getting out into the community. And something else that our agency is trying to do is build ties with local businesses and local leasing agents. Because oftentimes people at our shelter just need a chance, an opportunity, at a job, and sort of, there's that misconception that if you're homeless, you're somehow, you put yourself there. But really, it's as we're discussing, it's just people that oftentimes, have just come upon hard times and just need a chance.
And then you have those who may have had a brush with the law. And one of the challenges, I think, in South Florida especially, is homeowners associations. Mm-hmm. Have you had to negotiate or try and help someone who may have a criminal record get through that HOA process?
Absolutely. We have legal aid that can come to our shelter that can really work with those clients that need some legal assistance. And we can try to help people get their records expunged. And also, again, it's about educating the community that just because you might have something on your record doesn't mean that you can't be a productive member of society. So, yeah.
And it's really, really difficult when someone has a record. We see that every day at LifeNet. And so we're constantly trying to work with people where they are to get them to where they need to go. And so the concern that I have is that, it takes so much time to get through everything. And for families that are not sheltered, who may be living in an abandoned home, we have that. People who are living in a foreclosed home with their children who don't have adequate lights or food or anything. It's very, very difficult, and they're frustrated, and they start to try to think of other ways, sometimes illegal means of getting money, and you have to constantly work with them to say, okay, we're working with you, we need you to stay focused on how to do this the right way. And I find that it doesn't work with one agency trying to be everything. You really, really have to rely on partnerships. So at LifeNet, we work with the other organizations in the community to make sure that we're wrapping ourselves around the individual or family. And that's important because I can name a client, and chances are they've been involved with each one of these agencies. And we may not be able to make headway alone, but collectively we're always able to move the needle. And just recently we were able to work with a gentleman who has 4 children and was living in a foreclosed home and desperate to make change in his life and with his family. And he was at LifeNet every day with his children, getting them off to school, everything. Just such a good dad. Kids had good grades, and they're homeless. And we were able to work with a lot of different agencies in the community, and he was part of the rapid rehousing program. And so he just recently, 2 weeks ago, got into a home for him and his children. And it's such an exciting thing for not only him, but for the kids and the other organizations that have been a part of this, namely Catholic Charities was huge in trying to make this happen.
I only have a couple of minutes left, but I think it's important to get in before we leave that change, that rapid rehousing idea and that philosophical change that's happened. Can somebody explain that shift?
I'd be happy to talk about it briefly. So the shift in the housing model out there is instead of having a family go, and we deal with families, which is why I keep mentioning families.
Oh, that's what this is about.
Instead of having a family go from the street to the shelter and sort of case case manage them in the shelter and give them the services they need in the shelter and stabilize them there and then get them to the community. The shift is to take them from the street, put them into housing, and then intensively case manage them while they're in housing. So really to go from street to housing and kind of bypass the shelter system and case manage them in the community, to end the homelessness, to really reduce the homelessness problem.
And address that long waiting period
Yeah.
that Melanie was talking about.
Right.
So are we seeing, that's been about a year now, right? That was a federal shift?
Yeah.
And are we seeing that work?
Yes, it's working great. We have a few different housing programs through the Broward Homeless Continuum. We have a few rapid rehousing programs specifically for families where we will case manage them for up to a year and provide financial subsidies. And it really helps these families get into housing and then maintain their housing. There's also some permanent supportive housing where families can be, just as the name implies, permanently supported for as long as they may need if they're chronically homeless and have a disabling condition and really maybe won't work.
Well, it's great to end on a positive note. The time flew by, but I'm glad to know that there are things happening that are helpful. And of course, what all of you are doing is amazing. And I hope that some of our viewers will jump in and offer that time and treasure to helping our fellow man, woman, and child who may need their assistance. So as we've seen, issues that cause any individual or entire families to become homeless are complex and often due to circumstances beyond their control. I want to thank Liz Letzing, Melissa Banner, Jim Gress, and Melanie Geddes for giving us a greater insight as to the issues behind homelessness and the resources necessary to help confront it. For copies of this program or any other episode of Future First, please access our YouTube library through our website, cscbroward.org. Like us on Facebook, and remember to join us next time on Future First, focus on Broward's children.